Hi everyone and welcome to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. Before we get started, make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page as well. On today's episode of the podcast, we preview the test series between India and England and discuss what both teams need to do to win the series. Let's have a look at the fixture for England's tour of India. We'll start with the test matches, 4 of them. The first 2 played in Chennai on February the 5th and the 13th of February. The third test match and the fourth test match will be played in Ahmedabad. The third test match is the day-night test match. That's on the 24th of February. And the last one, March the 4th. Then we go into 5 T20 internationals, all of them played in Ahmedabad on the 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th, and 21st of March. And to end the tour, 3 ODIs in Pune on the 23rd, 26th, and 28th of March. So that's the full fixture for England's tour of India. Quite a busy schedule ahead. A lot of games to be played in this busy tour for England. Let's have a look at both teams and their squads for the first 2 test matches of the series. We'll start with India's test squad for the first 2 test matches. Kohli, Rahane, Agarwal, Ashwin, Bumrah, Kuldeep Yadav, Siraj, Hardik Pandya, Pant, Axar Patel, Pujara, Rahul, Saha, Ishant Sharma, and Rohit Sharma, Gill, Thakur, and Washington Sundar. That's India's squad. We'll have a look at England's squad for the first 2 test matches of this series. Root, Ali, Anderson, Archer, Bess, Broad, Burns, Butler, Crawley, Folkes, Lawrence, Leach, Sibley, Stokes, Stone, and Chris Woakes. So that's England's squad for the first 2 test matches of this series. Looking at those 2 squads, they're pretty good squads, obviously. What both teams are going to do in this series is do a rotation policy. Definitely England are. And there is some word coming out of the England camp that Ollie Pope is going to come into consideration for the first test, and he will join England's squad in time for the first test match. Apparently, he had a finger injury in the last English summer, so that's why he wasn't a part of the touring squad to Sri Lanka, and now he's going to be a late addition to the touring squad for England, so he may come back into the 11 for England, which is a bonus for them. I think India will learn the lessons from Australia in terms of how they manage their players in terms of injuries. They don't want another injury barrage again like they had in Australia. So I think their physios and doctors would learn the lessons from the Australia tour and say, right, this is how we're going to manage the players. You may not play all the test matches. We'll rotate you just to keep you fresh, because to back up 4 test match series back-to-back is hard work. And obviously, a lot of the guys who went to Australia for India would have had that break, a few days off, and they're back into it. So for India, it's just about managing their players well. They don't want to have injuries again, but injuries are uncertain. You never know who's going to get an injury, so you've got to be prepared. So both teams will adopt that rotation policy. I think in the new world that we are living in now, in terms of cricket, you got to really test the depth of the squad. We saw that in India, in Australia, and their squad was up to the challenge. The players who were asked to come in at short notice did a superb job, especially in the last test match with the inexperienced bowling attack that India had. But England's squad will be tested as well. Their depth will be extremely tested. And are those players up to the challenge in India, England's squad that is? Can they do what India's players did in Australia and the squad depth be good enough to win a series in India. I'm not sure about that, but I think we will see their squad severely tested in terms of depth because of the rotation policy and that they're implementing. But the question for me is, can their depth do what India did in Australia, and that's do a very good job and try and win the series for England? I'm not so sure. But we'll wait and see as the series progresses, obviously. But overall, they're pretty good squads, some good players in those squads, and we're going to see a very good contest between these two teams, as we always do. And this series will be no exception. It will be a great series, and let's hope we get a good series of Test cricket and may the best team win. Let's have a look at the stats between these two countries in Test matches. We'll start with a head-to-head record overall in Test matches. They've played 122 matches against each other. India have won 47 of them. England have won 26 of them and 49 draws. That's the head-to-head record overall in Test matches. We'll have a look at the head-to-head record in Test matches in India. So they've played 60 games against each other in India. India have won 19 of them. England have won 13 of them with 28 draws. So that's the head-to-head record in India in Test matches. Sachin Tendulkar, leading run scorer between these two countries, 2,535 runs. The leading wicket taker, James Anderson, 110 wickets. Most dismissals, MS Dhoni with 67. Most catches, Sir Alistair Cook with 38. And the most matches played by a single player between the two countries, Sunil Gavaskar with 38. So those are all the stats in Test matches between these two countries, which have been playing Test cricket since 1932 against each other, and a lot of history and a lot of rivalry in that time as well. Let's have a look back at the 2016 series in India, the last series that these two teams played in India. It was a 5-test match series. India won 4-0. The first test was a draw. The second test, India won by 246 runs. The third test, they won by 8 wickets, India. The fourth test, they won by an innings and 36 runs. And the fifth test, they won by an innings and 75 runs. Looking at that and looking ahead to this series, the question that England need to ask themselves is, can we get big first inning scores and can we chase? It is extremely hard to chase in the fourth innings in India because the pitch is turning, the bounce is low. It's very hard. Men around the bat, it's difficult. So for England, the question I have for them is, can they get those big first inning scores? If they can, then they put themselves in a good position to win a Test match. If they can't, then they're going to be very behind in the Test match. Looking at the last series, they batted first on 4 occasions. They lost 3 of those Test matches, I should say, and they drew one of those Test matches batting first. And the scores they made, 537, 283, 400, 477, and they still lost. Because India managed to bat well and bat big. So the question for England is, can their bowlers contain India's batsmen? If they can, then they'll put themselves in a good position to win the Test match. But if they can't, if the spinners of Jack Leach, Dom Bess, who have no experience in the subcontinent, in India in particular, and Moeen Ali, who has experience in India, because he played in the last series, can they take 20 wickets to win a Test match for England? I see them taking wickets, obviously, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because you have 2 inexperienced spinners Then you have Moeen Ali, who has experience in Test cricket and playing in India. Do I see Dom Bess and Jack Leach doing the job? Well, they're going to take wickets, but are they going to contain the runs? That's the important question there. Can they contain the run rate, and can they pick up wickets at regular intervals to put England in a strong position? If they can do that, then they're a chance. If they can't, it's a long way back. But I think England's bowlers, they need every single one of them to help out as well. Excuse me. Because you need everyone taking the wickets. You can't rely on the spinners all the time. You need the quicks to back up the spinners as well. But the one thing we do know is that if you bat first in India and you get a big score, you're going to still lose the game. And I think, looking at the results there, I think the last series that England played, I think they had their foot on the accelerator at times in that series, and they were really driving the advantage of the match. But then they took it off, and then they allowed India to put their foot down on their accelerator and drive straight past them to the finishing line and win the Test match. And that's what happened in the last series. In this series, they can't afford to do that. They can't afford to take their foot off England. They've got to keep it firmly on the floor. Just floor it all the way. They can't take it off because they got to capitalise on every opportunity that comes their way. If they have a bit of an advantage in a Test match, like a first innings lead, or they've got India under pressure, they've got to take it. They've got to get the wickets. They've got to take their chances, catch everything, create runouts, half chances, and etc. Because they've got to do it. If they don't, India will make you pay. And that's what they did in the last series, India. They made England play... They made India... let me try and say this again. They made England pay India in the last series because they let some opportunities slip. And that's what happened in the last series. Let's have a look at the batting stats from that last series. Now, these players who are on this list are playing in this 2021 series, who played in the last series. So, Curley, he scored over 655 runs. Joe Root, 491. Pujara, 401. Ali, 381. Stokes, 345. Ashwin, 306. Rahul, 233. Butler, 154. Wokes, 70. Rahane, 63. And Saha, 49. So, for England, in terms of their batsmen, they need Joe Root to stand up. They need Ben Stokes to score runs. I picked them two out as the key batsmen for England. If Joe Root can continue his form, then England have got a chance. But the thing with Joe Root is, when he scored that double century in the 180 odd against Sri Lanka, that was in Sri Lanka. This is in India. Can he do it against Bumrah, Ishant Sharma, Ashwin, Siraj? Can he do it against them? That will be the next question. And can he convert the 50s into hundreds? Because we all know Joe Root has a terrible conversion rate. It's the worst conversion rate out of the top players in the world, compared to Steve Smith, Kane Williamson, and Virat Kohli. His conversion rate is so poor. He can't afford to not convert those centuries, Joe Root. And he's got to make them into big centuries. He's in good form at the moment, but can he do it in India? That is the next question. For Stokes, can he score the runs, Ben Stokes? Because he's a class player. They need him to stand up England. If they've got any chance of winning this series in India, they need him to score runs. So I pick him out as a main man as well as Joe Root. For India, basically it's the usual names: Kohli, Pujara, Rahane. And now in this series, Rohit Sharma, Gill, they're going to stand up and score runs. So for India, their batsmen are pretty set. You know what you're going to get out of them. But for England, the big difference there is that the likes of Dom Sibley, Zach Crawley, Ben Foakes, Dan Lawrence, is that they haven't really got much experience batting on the subcontinent and especially in India. So that's why I pick out Joe Root and Ben Stokes as the two main batsmen for England, is because, and sorry, Rory Burns as well, I forgot him, who haven't got much experience. So really, they really got to do bulk of the run scoring if they have any chance of winning the series. We'll have a look at the bowling stats now from that series. And again, these are the players who are playing in this series, who played in the last series. So Ashwin took 28 wickets, Ali took 10, Broad took 8, Stokes took 8, Anderson took 4, Ishant Sharma took 3, Woakes took 3, and Root took 2. Excuse me. We know in India that the spinners are going to dominate. It's tough to bowl fast in India. You need to have some skills in terms of reverse swing and different variations. And this is my question to England, is can their bowlers do the job? Can their spinners like Moeen Ali, Jack Leach, Dom Bess, can they take 20 wickets? And they need Archer, they need Broad, they need Anderson, Woakes and Stokes, and even Joe Root if he decides to put himself into the attack to get wickets. It's got to be a team effort from them. With India's bowlers, they're pretty much settled. They're experienced, they know what to do. You know what you're going to get from Ashwin. He's going to pick up a 10-wicket haul and spin India to victory, like he did in the last series, where he picked up 28 wickets, 3 fifers, and 1 10-wicket haul. So you know what you're going to get from him. You're going to get some good bowling from Bumrah as well. Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Siraj is, bursting on the scene. So for India, they've got a lot of depth with the bowling in terms of pace and spin, whereas England, not so much with the spin department. They've got quality with Broad and Anderson and Stokes and Woakes and Moeen Ali with the spin, but they've got 2 inexperienced spinners in Bess and Leach. So it's going to be tough for India's bowlers. They've got to really contain India, dry up the runs. The best way of taking wickets is drying up the runs. Dot balls, maidens, putting the pressure on India to take wickets. If they can do that, they're a good chance. But that's going to be the thing for England in this series, is that they, as I said before, they've got to take their opportunities. They've got to take every catch, every wicket. It's crucial in this series. So after saying all that and looking at the stats from the last series, it's going to be a very interesting series. Obviously, Test series are not the same. So the 2016 series won't be the same as 2021. It'll be very different. Excuse me. But I see this series as a bit of a test for England. It's going to be a test for them. It's going to be a challenge, no doubt about that. Any side who goes to India, know it's going to be a challenge, and it's very hard to beat India in India. But England have done it. They've broken that drought. They're the only team to do it since 2012. So, in saying that, overall, I think it's going to be a great Test series, regardless of who you support, either India or England. I think both supporters will be feeling confident about their side's chances. But in saying that, I think it's going to be a great series. I hope it's a great contest. I hope we see both teams fighting it out to win every game. And hopefully it lives up to the Australia and India series as we just saw in Australia. Obviously, it won't be quite with that intensity like the Australia series, but if it can get close to it, then they'll be pretty good. So, but I think everyone who loves Test cricket is looking forward to this series. These two teams battled it out pretty hard in Test cricket. They've got a long history, and both teams want to win, and that's great. So we're seeing the best players in the world in this series. Two captains who are very good batsmen, and Kohli and Root, and they want to do well and hopefully lead their side to victory. Now, let's see what both teams will do in terms of their 11. I think India may go in with this 11. Rohit Sharma, Gill, Pujara, Kohli, Rahane, Pant, Sundar, Ashwin, Ishant Sharma, Bumrah and Siraj. England, Sibley, Burns, Pope or Crawley, Root, Stokes, Ali, Butler, Broad, Bess, Archer and Leach. So I think both teams may go in with an 11 similar to that or something else. But at the end of the day, it's about choosing your best 11 players to get the job done. So both teams will be ready to go, and hopefully whoever gets selected for both countries will try their best and hopefully get the win on the board in this first test match. But in this first test match, it's very critical in terms of the series. Who wins this first test match, it sets the tone for the series. If India win, then the momentum's with them, and it's going to be hard for England to come back. But if England can cause an upset in the first test match, then the signs are looking good for the rest of the series. But this first test match is very crucial in determining who will win this series overall. But we'll wait and see. Cricket's unpredictable, and it's going to be a very good series. I hope we have a very good series, a competitive series. Both teams fight it out and grind it out like we saw with Australia and India. And may the best team win in terms of the series. And for both teams, a bigger prize at the end of the series, obviously that place in the World Test Championship final as well. So what's at stake for both teams in this Test series? Well, obviously a Test series win, but a place in the World Test Championship final. Now, everybody may have heard the news that the South Africa and Australia Test series has been postponed due to obvious reasons. Now, that makes the race to the final interesting, because what we do know for certain is that New Zealand are already through to the World Test Championship final at Lords later on this year. Who will play them, though? Either India, England, or Australia. Now, you're saying Australia, but they're out of it. But they are still a chance to go through to the final. So we'll have a look at the different scenarios for India and England to go through to the final, and we'll have a look at the scenario that Australia needs to go through to the final. So we'll start with Australia. Given that their series against South Africa is cancelled, they needed to play the series, obviously, to get more points. Well, with the series not going ahead, they need these results to go their way. So for Australia to still qualify for the final, they need India to win the series 1-0, or England to win the series 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1, or the series ends in a draw, either 0-0, 1-1, or 2-2. That's how Australia will get to the final. Now, for India to go through to the final, they will need to win this series 2-1, 3-0, 3-1, or 4-0. Then they're through to the final. For England to go through to the final at Lords to play New Zealand, they need to win at least 3 matches in this series. And then they book their place in the final. So all to play for in this series for the World Test Championship. So it really puts a lot of emphasis on this series for both India and England, and Australia will be nervously watching on the sidelines to see if the results go their way. But it makes for a very good series, and both teams will know that, if we win this series, we go through and play that final at Lord's. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that's what India and England need to do in terms of qualifying for that Test Championship final. For Australia, they can only watch and hope results go their way. But we'll wait and see what happens in that race for the World Test Championship final. Time for my series predictions. Let's start with the series first of all. Who do I think is going to win the series? I think India's going to win the series. I think the momentum they've got from the Australia win, and they're playing at home, I think they're going to win quite easily. It's going to be hard for England to try and match the intensity that India will bring. Are they going to win 4-0? They could win 4-0, but as you know in cricket, anything's unpredictable and nothing goes to plan, so we'll wait and see, but I think they'll win the series overall. My predictions for the leading run scorer and wicket taker, I think Virat Kohli is going to have a big series. I think he's going to be the leading run scorer. And I think Ravi Ashwin's going to take the most wickets in the series overall. I think he's due for a big bag of wickets, so I think he's going to be the leading wicket taker for the series. So, in saying that, I hope we have a great series. I hope we have a competitive series, a great series of Test match cricket between two great countries. It's going to be a very good series over the next 4 Test matches. Both teams will fight hard, and I hope in the end we have a good series. A competitive series, and may the best team win. Well, that's the end of the innings, the close of play for this episode of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. And like and share our Facebook page. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.